Welcome to the Historian's Eye podcast for Jackson Spielvogel's Western Civ textbook, 10th edition. Chapter 6, The Roman Empire. Octavian, an astute politician, did not declare the Republic dead or himself emperor. In 27 BCE, he accepted the title of Augustus, and rather than emperor, he called himself princeps, or chief citizen. He followed the prescribed legal forms, and the Senate had a role in governing. But most of the authority was in the hands of the princeps. Significantly, the army swore loyalty to him. Concerned with moral decline, he restored the temples and shrines. The imperial cult was recognized. Julius Caesar had been deified at his death, as would be Augustus. Marriage and children were encouraged, while extravagance was discouraged. It was a golden age in literature with the works of Virgil, Horace, Ovid, and Livy. Augustus established a Julio-Claudian dynasty, which lasted until 68 CE. In 69, Vespasian, a successful general but not a member of the old senatorial families, founded the Flavian dynasty. His son Domitian assumed the title of imperator, or emperor. What had been implicit under Augustus became explicit. In the 2nd century, 5 good emperors maintained the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace. The empire, with its 50 million inhabitants, was prosperous, but more so in the cities, which proved to be the centers of regional Romanization, rather than in the countryside. The Romanization of the empire varied widely, but Roman ideals became more entrenched in the West, where Latin took root, than in the East and Asia, with its older traditions and where pre-existing Greek was the major language. The age of expansion was over. The Rhine and Danube rivers served as the borders of Europe, and the Near East was governed by client rulers. Including auxiliaries, the army contained about 400,000 soldiers, which was ultimately too few to defend such a vast territory, as the events of the 3rd century proved. The early empire was a prosperous era for many, not only around the Mediterranean, but also through the long-distance trade over the Silk Road from China and East Asia. In the early empire, Greek models were followed in the visual arts and in medicine. But in architecture and engineering, the Romans excelled, as exemplified in its 50,000 miles of roads, the Flavian Amphitheater, and the Colosseum. Rome itself had a population of 1 million. The gulf between the rich and poor was enormous, and bread and circuses were provided. 200,000 received free grain, and the Colosseum held 50,000 spectators for gladiatorial games. However, the 3rd century was an era of decline. Generals fought each other in civil wars, and German barbarian tribes and Persian armies invaded. There were plagues, population decline, and economic collapse, exacerbated by some emperors who were not quite so good as their 5 predecessors. One of the most important events in history was the birth and spread of Christianity, which grew out of Judaism. Jesus, who died about 30 CE, preached the love of God and one's neighbor instead of merely following Mosaic law. Some saw Jesus as a false Messiah. Others were disappointed that he did not lead a revolt against Rome. The Romans, fearing he was a rebel, executed him. His followers believed that he rose from the dead and ascended into heaven, and that he would return and establish the kingdom of God on earth. There were persecutions because Christians refused to honor the state cults. Martyrs were willing to give their lives for their faith. Christianity, with its promise of salvation for faith, and its universality as a religion for all, rich and poor, men and women, Greek and Roman, slowly gained acceptance until the conversion of Constantine. Under his rule, Christianity was not just accepted or tolerated, but it was endorsed by the state.